Republicans typically have been harshly critical of Democrats in the White House when they have used executive orders and the power of the pen. I mean, if they want to get done what Trump wants done, it's going to have to be legislatively.
Right. Look, executive orders really allow the president to control the executive branch of government, which he is the head of, after all, and order things that already exist within statutory framework. So people who are complaining about many of Trump's executive orders really should be complaining about the performance of Congress over the past 100 years or more, as Congress during the New Deal, just as one excellent example, ceded huge amounts of discretionary authority to the executive. The presidencies over time didn't pick all of this up off the ground by themselves. Congress gave up power.
Anyone right now who's bitching about Donald Trump trying to ram through his agenda through executive order, are you really surprised that presidents have taken advantage of having all this power ceded to them? We used to have the president have to go to Congress to get a declaration of war. When George W. Bush declared the war on terror, they ceded that power to the president. Congress has been completely impotent as far as being able to stop Donald Trump, and they're too scared to even oppose him. Are you really surprised that one day we're going to have an executive come in there and push the bounds of what's legal? Are we eventually going to get to the point where it's like an Andrew Jackson situation? The Supreme Court makes a ruling against Trump, and Trump's like, okay, go ahead and enforce that with your army. Oh, that's right, you have no army.
I'm curious your view. I was in the room the other night when Trump was standing shoulder to shoulder with the Israeli prime minister, talking about the U.S. taking ownership of Gaza, something that he repeated again. Now hearing from Secretary Rubio, softening Trump's plan a bit for what he laid out for Gaza. But I wonder how you saw what Trump laid out.
It's almost like if the president didn't have the ability to wage war without any congressional authorization, we wouldn't have to worry about any of this. But unfortunately, they ceded that power to the executive branch. So keep complaining about Donald Trump's insane plans about Gaza, but don't look at the underlying issue.
Look, there are really two issues here. The first is, what's the U.S. role going to be post-war in Gaza? I don't think it will look anything like what Trump suggested on Tuesday night. I don't think there'd be any support for it. It'd be very dangerous in the circumstances. He doesn't want to put troops in, which wouldn't be advisable anyway. So a lot of that, I think you can just disregard. The issue, though, that is critical is whether people are going to continue to insist on laying the basis for a two-state solution, which has utterly failed, utterly dead, and what's going to be done from a humanitarian point of view from the Palestinians living in Gaza, who have been used for decades by radical Arab states beginning in the 50s and 60s as a weapon to drive Israel into the sea, which isn't going to happen. So there's a lot to decide there, and I think simply rebuilding a high-rise refugee camp in Gaza is a prescription for another October 7 in due course.
Now, you just heard that, right? John Bolton, who has never met a war he hasn't loved, has never advocated more military intervention than Dick Cheney himself, is saying Trump's idea to just try to go in there and own Gaza, how are you going to get rid of Hamas? And he even said in the news conference, boots on the ground if necessary. I wonder if John Bolton ever thinks in his head, like, hey, maybe we shouldn't have actually imbued that much power in the executive branch when George Bush was president. But of course not, he's been cheerleading a war with Iran, and he doesn't want to get bogged down in Gaza. He needs to have those troops in reserve if we ever go to war with Iran.
If you're the national security advisor now, though, and Trump tells you that's what he wants the U.S. to do, to occupy Gaza after this war is over, you say...
Oh, the only thing you can say when you're talking to him privately that way is, well, have you considered the following considerations, the amount of security that would be required for significant U.S. involvement in clearing Gaza and then rebuilding it, the lack of likely private investors to put billions of dollars into an area that's subject to terrorist attacks. Remember the saying, capital is a coward. You're not going to get private investment in a highly politically risky, non-secure situation. You have to get security before you get the investment. That's why this whole idea of the Eastern Mediterranean Riviera is just utterly unrealistic.
And now we're in the situation where the Washington elite has created Frankenstein, and they're like, oh, well, Frankenstein has some really bad ideas when it comes to Gaza, but unfortunately, he's commander-in-chief. And Congress ceded all this power to the presidency and gave Trump the ability to try to make his insane plans about Gaza work.